Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing not just your reflection, but something else, something that shouldn't be there, something that's waiting patiently to be discovered. What if, when you looked in the mirror, you found not only your image, but the abyss itself, something that should never be seen?
When my family arrived in the city, it was still just a hill, an abandoned place where few dared to live. My father would tell me about the houses made of wooden sheets that slowly appeared amid the mud, building a city with dreams and hope. But there was something there, something that haunted the nights. An old woman, a resident of a secluded wooden house, a woman everyone feared. I never knew what happened to my mother, but what my father told me was dark. She disappeared, and I was left behind as a burden, a child abandoned by a woman who would never return. But what no one knew was that the old woman had something to do with it, something that still haunts me to this day. When I was a child, the absence of my mother was a wound I didn't know how to heal. Other children spoke with their mothers, received affection, listened to stories before bedtime, and I, no matter how hard I tried to fit in, always felt an emptiness inside me, as if something essential was missing. It was a pain that had no name but consumed me silently, like a shadow that grew every day. I didn't understand why my mother wasn't there, why the loving embrace everyone seemed to have was something so distant for me. Then the nightmares started. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing but unable to move a single muscle. It was as if the weight of an invisible force had trapped me. The room, at that hour, seemed different. The shadows were denser, and something in the air made the atmosphere oppressive. And then always she was there. A woman with dark hair and a cold, empty gaze sitting by my bed. Her eyes, fixed on me, exuded a chill that froze me inside, as if she knew something I could not yet understand. I tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. Sleep paralysis, my father would say. It's just nightmares, just your mind playing tricks on you, he would say, trying to calm me as if words could banish the terror. But deep down I knew there was something more to it. Something my father didn't want to see, something he didn't understand. He didn't see what I saw. The woman in the shadows, with her cold eyes and threatening presence, seemed to be more than just an illusion. It was as if she were part of something I didn't yet understand, something that had been following me, feeding on my fear, something connected to my mother, something my father didn't want to admit or didn't have the courage to face. He told me not to worry, to try to sleep, but each time, I knew those nightmares weren't just a reflection of my grief. There was a hidden truth, and I could feel that the woman who visited me in the silent nights knew it. Things began to change when Lupita entered my life. She was the only true friend I ever had, someone with whom I could share the emptiness I felt. We were always close, but there was something that bound us even more deeply. She too felt the presence of the woman. On the days we spent together, she seemed to sense something in me, something I tried to hide. But it was that night, when the nightmares took form, that everything changed. Lupita woke up in the middle of the night and saw the woman again, sitting next to me. She was there, watching me sleep, with those cold, empty eyes that had haunted me for so long. Panic overtook Lupita, something I never imagined she could feel. She, who had always been strong, couldn't resist. When she finally managed to speak, her words froze me to the bone. She said that the woman had touched me, and what she described was indescribable. The woman's hand, according to Lupita, was monstrous, grotesquely large, as if belonging to someone much stronger and more powerful than any human. That revelation left me in shock. Lupita knew what I felt, but she wasn't prepared for what lay behind it. After that night, Lupita never spoke to me again. She distanced herself from me as if something invisible had come between us, separating our souls. I didn't care about that at the time, because I already knew something much more terrible was happening. What I once thought was just a recurring nightmare, an illusion created by my confused mind, now became a cruel and undeniable reality. The woman, the evil presence that tormented me, was not just a reflection of my fears. She was there, around me, watching me, waiting for me. Over time, I began to hear people talking about her. Some said she was dead, that her presence was just a story, an old myth of the city, but I knew it wasn't like that. She wasn't dead. She was alive in some way, feeding off of me. Every glance, every movement she made around me was a reminder that she wasn't just a ghost from the past. She was feeding off of me, draining my energy, my life. I could feel, in every fiber of my being, that she was growing stronger with each passing day. And me, I was growing weaker. It was when I met Bernardo that something inside me began to change. He was different, kind, intelligent, and something in his gaze made me feel like I wasn't just the shadow the woman had made me into. He saw me. He saw me as someone of worth, something I no longer believed was possible. His presence in some way brought a light to the darkness that had always surrounded me, like a distant lighthouse inviting me to move forward. But as always happens, the woman, the dead one, wouldn't let me walk this path. She made me want something I knew I shouldn't, pushing me into the abyss, steering me away from peace. It was when I discovered that Bernardo was with Lupita that something dark ignited inside me. Hatred consumed me like an unquenchable flame. Lupita, my only friend, now became the enemy. What I felt for her was no longer just jealousy, but vengeance. She had what I wanted, and it didn't matter what it took. She had to suffer just as I had. The pain she caused me without even realizing it had to be repaid, and I didn't hesitate to follow my dark instinct. I followed her, without her knowing, each step heavier than the last, until the line between right and wrong completely dissolved. And then, something strange began to happen. The woman who had always been with me, who had always been by my side, began to change. She was closer, more present, as if my quest for revenge was feeding her, as if the suffering I was causing made her grow. She was no longer a distant presence, a shadow crawling in the corners of my life. She was there, by my side, stronger, more real, as if becoming an extension of myself, a manifestation of all my darkest desires. And then, when I looked at what I had become, I realized that the true face of what I had brought into my life was right before me. Death, suffering, pain, they were everywhere within me, around me at every corner I turned. There was no escaping it anymore. What I had started, the path I had chosen, now bound me irreversibly. The woman, now so strong and dominant, was no longer just a figure that tormented me. She had become part of me, an irresistible force guiding my actions, shaping my fate. I no longer knew what was real and what was not. I only knew that darkness, death, and pain had become my reality, and there was no way back. What I did, but I was no longer who I was. The death of Bernardo, the death of Lupita, it all seemed to lead me to an inevitable end. The woman was never gone. She only grew stronger, more powerful. Each act I committed, each sacrifice I made, I lost more of my soul. Now I am alone, and what is left of me is no longer human. I became what I feared, what I hated. And you, the spectator, are just beginning to understand the price of all this. The price of the pain I sought, the power I desired, the lives I destroyed without thinking of the consequences. Now, as you look at me, you see the truth of what happens when one chooses the path of darkness, what happens when one seeks control at any cost. What I have become is a reflection of the darkest depths of the human soul, and you, just like me, can never go back. The end is just the beginning of something even more terrible. Have you ever wondered what really binds us to a place? What makes someone return to a place they should have left behind? What if the house you live in was not just a home, but a living presence, feeding on your memories, your fears, and your secrets? Sometimes the ties that bind us are not visible, but they are there. And once you enter, there may be no way out. Could you escape such a place? Or, like me, would you end up becoming part of it? I grew up in a house that to anyone's eyes seemed normal, but there was something strange about it, something that couldn't be touched or explained, but was always present. I would spend hours staring at the walls as if they were hiding something, as if they had a story of their own. But it was after my father's death that everything changed. When the house was left to me, I knew I should sell it. No one wanted to live in that place, but something inside me forced me to return. I needed to understand. I needed to uncover what was behind those cold, dark walls. When I returned, it was as if time had stopped. Everything was in the same place, but the feeling was different. The doors creaked more, the air felt thicker, and an invisible presence seemed to watch me with every step I took. On the first night I heard something. At first I thought it was just the sound of the old house settling, but soon I realized it wasn't. It was a voice, coming from the stairs. I couldn't understand the words, but the melody was unmistakable. A feminine voice, soft but full of pain. I tried to ignore it, rationalizing to myself that it was just my mind, the stress of being alone in that place. But the more I tried to deny it, the stronger the voice became. It wasn't in the wind, it wasn't in the walls, it was inside my mind. On the second night, I decided to descend to the stairs. And when I placed my foot on the last step, I felt something cold on my neck, a sensation of dread that ran through my bones. When I looked back, there was nothing. But the sound, that sound, it was getting louder, like a call. Something wanted me to go all the way. Something wanted me to uncover the secret of that house. In the following days, I started remembering things I'd rather have forgotten. Things about my father, about my mother. They had told me a legend that haunted that house, but I had never paid attention. The story said that whoever lived there, no matter how hard they tried, would never be able to leave the house behind. Something of the house stayed with you, something that made you return. I didn't believe it, until I started seeing things that couldn't be real. Every mirror reflected something different, distorted images of myself, or rather, images of what I feared becoming. Shadow after shadow, figures moving when I wasn't looking. It was when I found the old box in the attic. Inside it were old photos and a letter. The letter spoke of a debt my father never paid, something he should have settled before he died. He had done something terrible to protect the family, something that sealed the house's fate. The debt wasn't just financial, but something more, something that dragged on through generations. I knew I couldn't just abandon everything again. Something inside me urged me to stay, an invisible force that seemed to hold me to that place. It wasn't just curiosity, it wasn't just the desire to understand what was happening. It was as if the house itself had power over me, a gravity that forced me to go deeper, to seek answers I didn't want to find. Every night, the voice on the stairs called me louder, dragging me toward the unknown. I tried to resist. I tried to distance myself, but the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the sensation became. It pulled me. It dragged me in a spiral I couldn't control. Something wanted me to go all the way. Something wanted me to see what was hidden. Something wanted me to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. And it was on the last night, when I couldn't take it anymore, that I went to the top floor, where no one dared to go. The place seemed forgotten, as if the house had abandoned that part of itself, a shadowy, silent area where time seemed to not exist. The air was thick and cold, and I felt the weight of the house's history pressing down on me, a pressure that almost made me doubt my sanity. The door was locked, but not for long. As if it knew I would get there, the key was right in front of me, lying on the floor. It was as if the house had decided to let me in, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside the room, I found what I was looking for, what I didn't want to see, what my mind had tried to forget. But it was too late. The house, somehow, had a life of its own, and now it had possessed me. Or maybe it had possessed me the moment I returned. The walls seemed to pulse, as if breathing with a primal force, a rhythm I could feel in every bone. The sound of the voice, now clearer and louder, filled every inch of the space, enveloping my thoughts and taking me over completely. I could no longer distinguish where the house ended and where I began. I didn't know anymore if I was still myself, or if I had already become part of that place. The letter had told the truth, and now I could see, the price you pay for abandoning the house is eternal. The house doesn't let you go. It takes you. It wraps itself around you. It uses you, and you become part of it, as if your soul were food for its ancient, unyielding structure. What happened to my father, my mother, to everyone who passed through there, was now my fate too. I had been chosen, like all the others before me. No matter how hard I tried to escape, I already became part of that story. The house wasn't just a place. It was an organism, an entity that fed on our stories, our fears, our secrets. It consumed us slowly, until there was nothing left but the echo of our voices, calling for those who had yet to arrive. And now, I was one of them, a part of the house. And the house, in turn, had me, in a way I couldn't fully comprehend, but somehow already knew. I was already lost between the walls that breathed and the shadows that moved, waiting for yet another soul to feed its endless cycle. That night, I understood what that voice was. It wasn't just the house. It wasn't an illusion of my mind or an echo of my own insecurities. It was something much older, deeper. The voice I heard, soft and painful, didn't come from the walls, but from the souls of everyone who had died there, who had been consumed by that house and couldn't escape. Those who, like me, had been lured into its labyrinth of shadows and secrets, and who, in trying to leave, ended up trapped, as if they were part of the very air, as if they were part of the space they occupied. I wouldn't be different. I wouldn't be the exception. The house had won, and now I too was part of it. There was no way out anymore. There was no going back. The decision I would make wasn't a choice, but a surrender. I no longer had control over what was happening. Every step I took sank me deeper into this fate, and every night that passed made it clearer that there was no escape. The house, with its endless corridors and suffocating secrets, had already shaped me. I had passed the point of no return. The weight of those walls, the cold touch of the shadows, the presence of all those souls trapped there, all of this was now part of me. I was no longer just a victim of the house. I was being assimilated, transformed into an extension of it, something that breathed and felt but no longer belonged to the world outside. And then, when I made the final decision, the fear I felt was replaced by a cold acceptance, as if something within me had finally understood what was happening. There was no more fight, no more escape. Whatever was there with me, whatever was the essence of this house, I would become part of it. There was no more doubt. The pain, the resistance, all of that faded away, and what remained was a silent surrender. I was already lost, like everyone else before me, and now the house had taken me, consumed me. I was no longer a visitor, nor a resident. I was a fragment of it, one more shadow in the endless labyrinth. The house had finally won, and with it, I too had been absorbed, as part of an endless cycle, a cog in a machine of pain and loneliness. And somewhere, in the depths of those walls, I heard the voice, now clearer than ever, calling me, accepting me as an equal. Because in the end, all those who come to it sooner or later end up becoming part of what it is, and now I was part of the house.